Okay. Is that thumbs up? Got a thumbs up? We're going to just wait patiently until we're sure that it's up and running.
That sounds good.
Yeah. I'll offer silly introductions. We're good. There's a momentary delay when it's about to start. Or I think there's a momentary delay when it's about to start. It's such a funny thing. Okay, everybody, welcome to the second Saturday Artist Talk. This is an event where we try to lend a little bit of extra perspective to our exhibitions and the artists we work with here at Aggregate Space Gallery. And I'm super, super excited to introduce everybody to Alicia McDaniel and her installation, Imposter. This is a really special exhibition for us, in part because this is the first exhibition of Aggregate Space Gallery that's funded partially with funds from the Andy Warhol Foundation. So this is a real big deal for us. They're going to be supporting. This is the first of 10 shows that they're supporting amongst some other exhibitions. But, it's a really big deal for us to be able to invite you to do something totally crazy, like plaster our entire space with brown paper bags. So thank you everybody for coming. I guess the first thing that I kind of have been thinking about, kind of keeping myself as you guys have been working on this installation, is when you first had this idea, which was this is the third iteration, is that right? Okay, so you did a test version, and then you did it for your MFA thesis at California College of the Arts last year.
Correct. Yes.
Yep. And then this is this kind of continuation of that idea. Like, when you had the first idea to kind of take this this idea that represents such horrible things and turn it into something so beautiful, did you feel like you stumbled onto something artistically that how did that come about? How did you feel about that?
Absolutely. It was a sort of a groundbreaking idea to adhere this material to the wall. I had been working around similar themes around my sister and I in regards to colorism, skin privilege, racism. And when I was first working with the brown paper bag, I was using it more as a canvas. So I was drawing and painting on it and constantly fighting to resolve a way I can really incorporate these themes into the material. And it kind of happened overnight one night, and I was, I think, on my 20th painting before my advancement review, and I just decided what happened if I used the bag itself to paint, right? And I just started gluing it to my studio wall, and I created like this camouflage-looking mural. And from there, I started thinking about murals and wallpaper and sort of dominating a space. I'm covering white walls with this brown material.
Right.
And I think just
It's one of our aggregate, a former board member last night was by, and kind of brought up the thing that kind of a lot of people always bring up at aggregate space, which is like, what a crazy thing to do, and was kind of talking about just how much beauty there is in it, and that it's you've stumbled onto something that creates these dual paths of really heavy commentary, as well as being just a quite beautiful experience.
Thank you.
So, congratulations on that. When you did that install in your studio, like, was it easy to remove? Did you get in trouble? Like, was it just, did you just like run at it?
Yeah, so I rented a critique space for the MFA showpiece, and I had it over a few days longer than I was supposed to. I received a few emails. But yeah, and it was my first time where I applied it using like Tyvek, right?
Right.
It was my first time utilizing Tyvek as a material.
That first time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it could have went either way. It could have, totally damaged the wall. It could have torn when I peeled it off. But because of the materials we used in the paste I made, it peeled right off, like seamlessly. Yeah. I was very lucky for that.
This maybe got too technical because I'm upset. So the Tyvek is the underlying material. It's like a building wrap that they covered all the walls with, and then put this on top of it as to protect our walls, but also to make it reusable in the future. It's like a really, really smart, kind of nerdy way to do it.
Yeah.
It's really, really excellent. So you're still at CCA, right? You're still, and you're pursuing now an MA.
Correct, yes. I'm studying visual critical studies. It is my second master's degree I'm starting, and I'm very proud and happy to continuing my education there at CCA. It's
cool.
Wonderful school.
Yeah. And what was your undergrad?
My undergrad was in studio art at Mills College.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh, right. I think
always been Bay Area.
Bay Area art. When did you first decide that pursuing an art degree was what you needed to do?
I believe it was my first year at Mills.
Yeah.
I always knew I wanted to do something creative. However, I wasn't sure what that would be. So I went to the advantage of me going to a liberal arts school with multiple outlets, multiple degrees. I was able to really test the waters out and see what I really wanted to do. And for a few minutes, I was like, oh, maybe computer science. But did not work out.
What was the thing that really got you excited about art? That made you nail it down?
I think what really got me into making work is just the process of it. I think there's something really incredible, making something of your own. And for me at this time, I was just developing language about like what it meant to be white passing. Even though it's a reality my family and I always grew up with, these elements, I had no words for them or a way to articulate it.
Right.
And when I started articulating my thoughts and doing the research, I just really found it feeling my art making practice. And
so can you talk a little bit more about that? Like because you use that language as white passing person of color in your artist statement, and I think it's a really interesting
thank you
creation of. I mean, there's an honesty to it, and again, similar to your work, honesty in the heart. Can you just talk about like how that term came about and how it developed, and maybe a little bit about your collaboration with your sister?
Yeah, absolutely. I started taking some book art classes, and my sister's a phenomenal writer. So we started, we started exchanging our art, and she would read me some of her poems, and we just started having these larger conversations once that conversation was started. And through my sister, we were able to articulate these themes. And, being a white passing person of color is, like my sister and I have the same racial identity, right? We're both multiracial, and my family's multiracial. And, it's just, just one geographical difference really determines how we're perceived in the world. And, it was a great way to exchange stories about that and reflect on it and speak to larger issues. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish with this work. I'm trying to find a platform for my sister and I to both creatively speak to her experiences, because I can't speak for her experience. I can only speak for mine. Right.
But I think your experience and your closeness with her has made you be able to kind of speak about this in a very different way. And for those of you who haven't seen the small chapbook that they created, that they collaborated on for the exhibition, is kind of Melissa's largest contribution outside of, was she involved at all in the poem or the video piece?
This video piece, I wrote the text for this one, and I've always had my sister proofread. I always have her trim check. I don't want to ever, get anything wrong, and it's very harsh language.
Yeah.
They're harsh topics, and I'm trying to be sharp about it.
Yeah.
And she's great. I don't want to exactly hit viewers over the head with these messages, but I also want to get to the point. So I think the text really allows me to do that.
Yeah, again, not to keep going back to that same thing, that it's a rarity, I think, to make work that's so socially conscious and aggressive, while still not turning people off to it or scaring the white folks away. And I think that's a big part of being able to make work like this in a gallery setting. So we're of course not the we're not a major Bay Area institution, but I think as this work grows and as you do kind of catch the eye of larger institutions, I think that's going to be really a benefit of how you're choosing to talk about these ideas and the ways in which you're displaying them and kind of hiding and bearing them. So were you always Bay Area?
From Sacramento, California, so yes and no.
Yeah, and your family's. I've talked a little bit of your mom and dad, but maybe like where has your family been? Like what's the lineage?
Oh wow.
Mostly. I know it's
a lot. So my parents were both born. My mother was born in Santa Rosa, California. And my father was born in Sacramento, California. And my mother's father is from Mexico, and her mother is from California as well. And my the woman who this show is about, really, my grandmother, my father's mother, and she has a very complicated history. I grew up thinking, this is my own assumptions and stories I've heard. I always thought she was directly from Mexico. Come to find out, she's Native American, and she was actually, her family were sanctioned to Mexico. So even though this was their home, they were sent back to a country. And then she grew up there for a while and then moved back to Colorado, and that's where she participated in the brown paper bag test.
Right. And is she the one you speak about in your artist statement, or
yes.
in the show statement about bleaching your skin and kind of
that's right.
aggressively trying to avoid tests like the brown paper bag test? Exactly.
And, it was the time period, and it was what she internalized from it. She wanted to assimilate, and she wanted, I view this as like a form of survival and protection. Right. She was trying to protect her family, but the consequence of that was really deep.
Right, and involves, I'm sure, some significant trauma to her and the family.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She passed away a few years ago, but yeah.
What do you think she would have thought of this?
Who knows? She's a very private woman, so, I would hope she was proud, at least that I was engaging in the conversation.
Right.
She was becoming a little more open towards the end of her life about talking about her experiences. So I'm hoping that if she were to see this, or if she's seeing it now, maybe she's more confident in talking about it, or thinking about it at least. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. I'm excited about that. So, jeez, what do you feel like this is doing that you've not seen done before? This is a path that you've opened up for yourself, and I imagine you were a practicing artist for 5 or 6 years. I can't guess your age, but you're very early in your career, and you've stumbled on this thing again that's both personal and very accessible to other people, and poetic, and able to be wonderfully done. Do you feel like this is Do you feel like this is the right path with opening these conversations and being kind of a window into allowing people to kind of feel them and take steps with them?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's not one way to look multiracial. You know, there's not one way to look like a person of color, and there's no one way to experience. You know, what I find remarkable when it happens is when people can connect their own experiences to these conversations. And I want to keep them open, and I want to hear stories from other people. You know, there's so many diasporas and so many lived experiences, you know, and I'm sure there's so many other dark parts, you know, of America we're not even touching, you know. This is one of the many things that have been swept under the rug, you know, these tests. And I'm curious to find out what else has been hidden. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Somebody just, I mean, well, number one, if you're not hearing them, everybody, this is making everybody that's seeing it remember an experience, or remember a story, or remember something that they read or heard about. I mean, I think that it is really absolutely affecting people in a very, very personal way. So you should be really, really proud about that.
Thank you.
But last night there was an artist brought up Michelle Obama's new book, which kind of talks in depth about the various constructs that they used in the South to trick people into not voting, or to not think that they would be allowed to vote. You know? And just the aspects with which that all of this is a construct, and that it's all just an excuse to kind of let loose internal fears and to maintain, you know, an inappropriate wealth balance. And that, you know, it's a strange thing and a terrible thing, but you're finding a way to shine light on something that's there are a million stories and a million versions of these tests that you've kind of focused on. So that's just really important.
Absolutely, thank you.
So what are you studying in your MA? What's your focus?
My focus right now?
Yeah.
A
lot?
Oh, there's a lot going on. Well, right now I'm writing a paper I'm focusing a lot of Adrian Piper's work, who's another white-passing, very famous, amazing writer, philosopher, artist, who I'm trying to connect with, you know. I'm writing a paper about her works and how they relate to Kantian, sorry, I keep saying Kant. You know, rationality. And so I'm sort of diving into her work, and I'm giving a presentation on her in my methodologies class. And, you know, and that's what's great about the program. You know, I get to study different things and a variety of people.
Do you see your future being kind of more of a writer researcher, as well as your artists are continuing, or
Absolutely.
Teaching, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Open up. It's all open. That's awesome.
Thank you.
This is an excellent time to be committing your thoughts to a recorded thing to look back on in the future.
Oh boy.
So the install, you involved your family, which I think, according to your dad, was the first time that you've involved them as part of one of your projects. And they put some significant time in on this. I mean, do you see that as important to the work, or do you see that as, in part, a means to the end to making this happen in such a quick period of time, and with the amount of planning that you were able to put together? Like, is it important to you that your mom and dad and your sister helped you do this?
Yeah, I think it is important. I say that because I always look at my work as sort of a collaboration. And again, you know, I'm speaking to not only my own experiences, but like my family's experience. So it really makes me confident and happy that they're volunteering their time to put their hand into it. You know, it's about them and for them. And I'm incredibly grateful that I have an awesome team. Like, my parents are incredible. And it took us 4 days, a scissor lift, and 3 sets of hands to accomplish this.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't seen, we did time lapse of this install, or a significant portion of it, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. So much time. I think I bring that up because I agree it's important to you, and people might not be aware. I mean, I'm sure that people close to you are aware that this was kind of a family affair, but I think it's a really strong part of the work, that it was that you worked with them, and that they were so kind of a large part of the decision-making process and how you put the show together. Despite just being fully in support of your ideas, they were trying to help you do it quicker and better, and make it look better, and make sure that you use all the materials as effectively as possible. It was really a wonderful thing for me to be a part of.
Yeah,
floating around with my broken foot. But I guess, do you see that as something that moves forward with the work? Like, do you see, because I think one thing that you'll get out of this, the experience here in retrospect, is how it really truly did affect so many different people of so many different diaspora and backgrounds. And, people have been walking in, we're in this great part of West Oakland where anybody could walk through that door, from like a 25-year-old white girl with a new baby to like, a 14-year-old kid that's been in West Oakland his whole life, to workers, to fancy gallerist people, to, funders from New York City, so it's, we're really lucky here. And I think, again, this speaks to it's speaking to everybody. And do you see a future for this project that is less family oriented and could maybe just take advantage of the way you're thinking about ideas and kind of bring them to new ways, and to new people in new ways? I don't know. That's kind of a weird question, but I think it's like, I feel like this is important, that your family's involved, but do they have to be in the future?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm also thinking about how I'm incorporating like other narratives of people I'm not necessarily related to by blood. And right now I'm working as a fellow at the Bethany Center Foundation. Particularly, I'm one of the studio assistants at Riff's Table, which is the nonprofit art organization associated with the retirement home. And I'm actually asking the residents to collaborate with me. And I'm thinking of starting an archive of their family photos. And, most of the population of the seniors who live there are people of color and immigrants, and they have really great stories that I want to share. And at the same time, I'm also constantly check my position, and make sure that if I am speaking to their stories, that they are really speaking to themselves as well. Right. So another collaborative work with the residents might be coming up soon.
That seems really apropos of what how you've kind of created this scenario where you were kind of working on the stories of your family and with your sister. That leaves me with a really exciting feeling. So that's great. I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. I guess I feel like this audience might be really eager for questions, and I feel like it might be better to just continue with some audience questions. So who has something they want to ask Alicia or myself about the exhibition or this?
Alicia, can we hear more about your experiences that brought you to talk about this issue? Or even your grandma, because you do talk about your grandmother. Can we hear more about that? Can you expand on that, please?
Absolutely. So this show spawns from my, imposter kind of alludes to how I feel both like an insider and outsider in both aspects of my identity. And, some experiences, I remember in my high school, I walked into a Hispanic Student Alliance,
Mm-hmm.
and I really wanted to participate and join, and I was turned away because I was told that this space isn't for you, it's for people like us.
Right.
And, I was very passive, even more so, and I walked away, and I
Right.
should have stood my ground, and that memory sort of haunts me. And it sort of affected how I navigated myself with other organizations. And I wanted to be involved, but never had the courage until I went to Mills.
Right.
And I started joining groups such as In Living Queer, which was a QSA
Mm-hmm.
For students of color.
Mm-hmm.
And I started hosting workshops about what it meant to pass as white.
Right.
And, and other experiences in regards to my family. I often think about this too. I often think about how what people assume about me or how I'm perceived when I'm by myself versus when I'm with my family.
Right.
Right. Growing up, I was, whenever my mother would take me into the grocery store, for instance, people would ask her, how many kids can you watch? Assuming that she was my nanny or caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
No one ever assumed I was hers.
Right.
And sort of those stories have added and led up to this work, trying to understand why do people assume nanny first, before anything, and that's partially because the stereotypes were fed and sort of this rhetoric that was repeated.
Right.
Yeah.
But it says so much about just those two simple stories say so much about just general assumptions that people can make and how they can be so terribly offensive to others, which I think is not something. I guess the video piece speaks a lot to that, and the pencils a little bit. But I feel like it's something that you largely are keeping set aside in this exhibition. So it's nice to hear that those were the catalysts. That it was that you did take these dark experiences and kind of turn them into something, a little bit more open-ended.
Definitely.
So so you worked with other groups when you went to Miss? So you said that story was in high school with the
The
when you
HSU, yeah.
Oh my God.
High school, it started sooner too, as a child, was told I was adopted. Like, that's not your mom. It's like, that's your dad's nanny, just like jokes like that growing up. And then even by like other Latino students, I was called names, like
Right.
Weta, Pocho, like, because I'm like, the assimilated Latina, right?
Right.
And
But just by assumption.
Assumption, yes. And it's not until, even today, some people don't validate my identity, or my identity isn't validated to people, or they sort of don't believe it unless I'm in the presence of my own family.
Right.
And then, they'll say my mom. I've had people I've worked with for over a span of a year, and, they see my sister and my mother, and they're like, oh, you are. Kind of like, oh, wow, you were lying, and...
Do you find that you can use it as a way to kind of sense people's intentions now? Like, do you sense this person isn't quite as woke as they claim to be, or isn't quite as thoughtful as they think they are?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like you're like a secret agent in a lot of ways, where you can kind of detect if people are if people are actually kind of aware of their biases.
Well, it's definitely interesting, and I'm thinking about Adrian's, calling card piece, right? It is kind of like being a fly on the wall, right? Mm-hmm. You sit back and you listen to people speak, and I remember at Mills, I was hanging out with some, classmates after class, drinking a little bit, talking, and all of a sudden, someone made, they're very liberal, it's a very liberal arts college, these are great people, and, they're doing great research for, we were really involved with social justice in the curriculum, So I was like, okay, cool. Maybe these people are more woke and understand. And, you know, sure enough, a few minutes in drinking, someone makes a joke about Mexicans. And I look up, and then she looks at me, and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot you were Latino.
Right, like that's the problem.
And I'm like, you don't see what you just did? You know, and it gets, you know, I had to say, hey, that's, like, what would you still make the joke if I wasn't there?
Right.
You know? And, like, you know, like, it's just unbelievable that, like, my appearance, like, made you comfortable enough to do that. Even though you knew, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of stuff like that. And
that's nasty.
So, yeah, you just gotta call it out. And, it's nasty. It's heartbreaking.
Do you call, when you, like, in that experience, do you find that you dealt with that more, or do you deal with things more aggressively now that the more kind of you study this, and the more kind of you study other authors talking about this, and, you know, formalize your own density of opinions?
I try not to be too aggressive about it, because if you're too aggressive, people feel attacked. And
right, yeah, it has the opposite effect.
They don't change.
right, but I mean, being aggressive.
But stressing, yes, but, like, being vocal. And, telling someone I'm definitely a lot more inclined, and I'm quick to tell you, don't do that, you know? Whereas maybe if I was 13, 14, I probably would have just been wouldn't know what to do.
Right.
But now, like 10 years later, you know, you have to be vocal about situations like that. Yeah. You know, if you hear them, because if you don't stop them, they're just going to keep happening.
Right.
And I couldn't sit and listen, you know, and that's something that comes up in this piece too. It's like, when I see things being done or targeted towards my sister, for instance, it's like a feeling of helplessness. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I can approach the person and tell them off and yell at them till my head comes off, but it's still hurtful that I'm not in a position right now where I can stop those assumptions from happening, right? And, you know, I mean, we went to a world market, and the security guard followed my sister on the other side of where I was, and and we approached him and acted like it wasn't a big deal, but it was a huge deal. And, you know, the guard was also a person of color, so it was it was a very interesting conversation we had, and happens all the time. Right. It's just have to be vocal.
Do you see, do you feel that there's a difference in Oakland than there was in Sacramento?
Sacramento, hey. Oh, wow. I mean...
it's like, I guess, is there a localized, different types of stereotyping that happens?
Yeah, I guess so. It's honestly, I think that, like, for me, spending more time in San Francisco, for instance, I'm very surprised to hear what people assume and say. Right. You know, and it's great, you know, and I mean, the thing with Sacramento was we grew up in, like, this neighborhood with, like, retired elderly white people, right? And so those assumptions were kind of, like, more straightforward, like... So our neighbor, when we first moved into the neighborhood, approached my dad and said, hey dude, like, you know, you need your lawn mowed or something, you know, go hire a Mexican, you know? Right. Like, it's like, whoa. Kind of more blatant assumptions that are, you know, underlyingly, like, innocent, but blatantly racist. And then, you know, go to downtown Sacramento was where I felt most confident, you know, more diversity over there. But even now, Sacramento's changing because, you know, they added this giant Golden One arena, so there's a lot of gentrifying happening and a lot of displacement going on. And a lot of my friends have moved. And, you know, it's just, it comes from everywhere, these assumptions. I've heard it all, you know, growing up and over here too.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like urban centers. I mean, just what you said about cities. I've lived in a variety of places, and urban centers are the places where I feel like stuff like that seems to happen less. But when it does happen, it's far worse.
Yeah, it's pretty out there.
Like it's like in rural areas, it's like a constant, but there's almost no ill will because it's just ignorance. Whereas in cities, when the choice is made to be aggressively racist, it's overt and as hard hitting as it can become. But it's your stories kind of made me feel similar. That was a good. Thank you for asking that question and sending us down that route. I was actually kind of quite afraid of bringing that stuff up with you. I knew. Well, no, I mean, I think it's tough. That I want to treat this like it's you being able to express yourself in whatever way you want to, and I was unsure if you wanted to get as personal as that, and kind of, but I'm glad you allowed it to happen. I think it's going to be more useful stuff for you to reflect on.
Absolutely.
Later. And for anybody that's watching online. Is there anybody watching online? I can see.
Is there anybody?
There's one person watching.
Hi.
Hi, one person. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah. Yes.
So, Alicia, I'm aware that in your Baby Pieces show, you did some of the front and back here's the walls, but I'm aware that the video installations are all new works. I'd love to hear more about that and some of the decision making, kind of the evolution from where you finished your MFA and where you are right now.
Wow, that's a great question.
That is a great question.
Yeah, so the video work is brand new. And, I wanted to physically incorporate more collaboration and people into the experience that I'm sharing. And, with the vein test, I see it, and this is the name of the video, the vein test, which is working very similarly to me as the brown paperback test. That one's functioning to show, veins as a material to segregate people of color. And the video is comprised of both my family and friends. And, so it's very personal to me. And in regards to the video in the theater room, that was challenging. I was working through 18 hours worth of family footage, and I've held on to it for about a year or two now, not knowing what to do with it, and I hadn't even watched all of it. And I forced myself to watch all of it, and I found it to be pretty compelling. It was a great time for reflection, and it was a great time for me to really see when my sister and I were going through these things together, right? We're living in separate places right now, but seeing how we interacted with each other and other people was really interesting. And there's two scenes in the video that are very important. I don't know if anyone can catch them with the audio, but my father holds me when I'm born, and he's like, "Wow, she's white." She's white, huh? She's precious, though.
Right.
And then mirroring that is an image of my sister's birth tape where my mom's holding my sister, and she says, "Wow, you look a lot like Alicia, but you're darker." But I didn't want to I wanted to keep those elements subtle into the video work, because I think it is taking my whole work into an entirely different direction. Right? Oversaturating the color of their skin, I think, is more of a poetic way of showing our difference. And, and the way it's animated, sometimes when we're together, we kind of blend into the same color.
Right.
So I'm really happy with the new video work, and I think that this evolution from painting to printmaking to installation to video, it's been a ride.
Yeah.
I think it's, but video is inviting me to incorporate the voices of other people.
Right.
I think, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it is as a you're working with a found footage experiment, and then you're working with something that you shot yourself. I think they're both really effective in very different ways. And I was so excited when I heard about you doing the piece in the theater at the very beginning of kind of our earliest talks. And Shage told me about what that plan was, and then I saw some of the footage, and I think there's you by doing what you do effects wise to that video, you almost remove the race from the content outside of the audio. Like strangely, you create this kind of this mayhem that is visually like so arresting, and that you can find yourself getting lost in visuals in a way that kind of is putting a barrier between this kind of rather heavy-handed content, maybe even compared to what's going on here, to then kind of create this scenario where it's like I find the most startling elements of like the laughing and because there's kind of like a little bit of a horror movie vibe with the way it's like just the visuals and kind of the audio the way it's been augmented, and but then there's like these really sweet moments of life and of wonder and of family stuff, and it's much more personal, but it works with the book, and I just think it's very, very clever how you put it together. I'm very impressed. It's wonderful. You took all of our advice and you did way better things than our advice. Like, that's like always the dream scenario.
Thank you.
Is that somebody's like, oh, that's a good idea, I have a better one. and then execute it. So thanks. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it was answered
Yeah.
fully?
Yeah, I feel like it was answered, and I feel like some of the pan shots of seeing just different family members and seeing the landscape in which she was raised also allowed for a window in, as well as like when you did have that time-lapse video of the install, and it helps fabricate the view into her work, into the we that she refers to in terms of when she speaks to her work, and it's kind of the support system, the place that she comes from.
That's excellent. Well said. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah.
So, I was just thinking about the we and the I, or the her, all these pronouns that are used here. And I was thinking about the we of the audience and experience, because there's a lot of like comparisons that could be made between like mural and installation, and I'm especially thinking about down here, and maybe about things like portrait and landscape, because it's taking up the space, but you're kind of invoking the genre of portraiture. But the thing that really sits with me, and I want to ask you how you think it through, is this idea of abstraction versus figuration. Because this is kind of like any abstract expressionist painting by like Clifford Still, or one of these kind of New York school, or well, he's not so much New York, he's West Coast too, but that kind of canon of abstract work. And yet with the text, you're doing something that's very figurative. It would be different if the text weren't here. And I'm just wondering about those kind of formal decisions that you make about removing something that could be body or embodied, as opposed, and that's different up there, as opposed to bringing in something that's not only information in text, but as text is figured. And even your decision about font, like how would that be different if it was sans serif, if it was Arial, or something like that? Could you talk about that formal kind of?
Sure, yeah. Well, I really wanted to take more, while the text is very personal, I wanted to take more of an authoritative approach to it, and I think it's the only way it could have been accomplished is with the font like this. And I wanted to kind of elevate it, like, to a status of painting. And I really like your comment on portraiture as well. And, you know, in the same way that the paintings in the hallway are functioning as well, they are portraits. And, yeah, I think that it was a battle for me to constantly remove and incorporate figurative elements. You know, as I was stating in the beginning, I was painting on top of these bags a lot of representational portraits and representational figures. So stepping away from the representational, I think, really allowed me to keep it open-ended and keep leave room for interpretation, I think, is what it does and how it functions as an abstract work. And yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, you know, like this whole thing about brown paper bag is about holding up the brown paper bag next to your skin, and that skin certain texture. Like, what would happen if you could, like, flatten this out, like maybe a panel, like, you know, like Byron Kim, his famous work, you know, just make it very uniform. But that's about the truth of skin too, because our skins aren't nobody's skin is, you know, without dips and surfaces and relief. I mean, you know, acne written, that's just the truth of skin with pores.
Yeah, I think just the in your comment about portraiture, I mean, I think the choice to have the family portrait down the hallway puts this kind of great it adds this other line to this whole other work about how it's kind of all a construct. That the bag, like the paper bag test is a construct, and that bags are all different colors anyway. Yeah. But that skin color being different colors from a family that has, you know, relatively the same lineage, has then kind of created this other level of construct that those two are kind of. I feel like those two pieces, in terms of portraiture, create that conversation that both the racism is a construct as well as the physical manifestations of race are a construct, and that it all is kind of just bullshit, you know, and you're just like laying that out very clearly and again aesthetically without doing drawings, you know, without you've left very much of your hand out of it with those two particular pieces. For sure. Yeah, and then, you know, these could be the text piece in the book and the piece in the theater, or the opposite, where they're 100% your story. Definitely.
So. And yeah, there really is an absurdity to, like, these materials, right? Like, who established the color of the door? You know, was it always the same shade? You know, right. All these brown paper bags are different tones. So, and the pencil one, wow, my gosh, that was my my reaction to that. It's heartbreaking.
Can you talk about that for those that didn't read the get a chance to read the label?
Yeah, for sure. So the pencil test was established in South Africa, and then later adapted into African American and Latinx groups, and it was a test of hair texture. If you put the pencil down and it fell straight down, you passed. And that's very absurd, you know. There's a lot of people of color with straight hair. You know, everybody has different types of hair color, and it's just and then, you know, with the door test, you know, that segregated spaces of worship. You know, it was utilized primarily in churches in the South, and it's just so interesting, you know, like how overarching systems of whiteness have, you know, produced like the I guess the structures for these tests, right? These tests were created by people of color, like as a response to adapting to whiteness, right? So it is sort of, there's some sort of mockery and humiliating part of it, you know. I couldn't imagine actually going through one myself, you know. And yeah, my sister and I, she also speaks to it in her work, like like what would have happened if her and I, looking the way we do now, like participated in one back then, like would she pass or fail? Would she fail and I passed? And what would happen to us? You know, my research, some families were separated. Babies were given up for adoption because they passed for white. And to me, that's family is the most important thing in the core of my work, of my foundation of my being. So just reflecting on that really fuels my drive to make too. Yeah.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any other thoughts? Oh, that's a good amount of time. Oh, one more. Excellent.
I was just wondering if you wanted to speak more about some of the specific memories you have behind the, not only the scenes in the video, but also the text behind you. I remember we started talking about our early experiences encountering racism, and there are some memories that I had that I didn't even know that I intentionally blocked out, and you remembered them, and you always were very upset hearing about them, because sometimes you weren't there when I was in the playground, and someone called me like poopskin, for example, and you remembered that. And yeah, so I was just wondering if you wanted to speak more about some of the experiences that you mentioned in either the text there or shown in video.
Yeah, of course, definitely. Thank you for, and that was my sister, Melissa, everyone. She's the author of the book. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of instances inside and outside our family where this has happened. And, you know, inside the home, we were given like these innocent nicknames from relatives, or seemingly innocent on the surface, and which fueled my earlier work. You know, people call me Lily in my family, which is like a term after like a white lily flower. So, and then with my sister, her nickname from the same people was Monchichi. And Monchichi, anyone knows, is like this toy. It's like a humanoid monkey. And it's very popular in Asia right now, and it was very popular in America in the 80s. And yeah, I mean, everybody called her Monchichi, Chichi, right? I was called Lily or Lily Bean, and you know, when we got older, you know, we started recognizing what those meant and what those underlying, you know, colorism, racism is so internalized, you know. We don't know, we don't see how it affects self-esteem of our loved ones, right? And, you know, when we were old enough to understand she was being called a monkey, she shut down, and that made me horribly upset. And it was supposed to be a term of endearment, not a form of like, to hurt you, but understanding why those nicknames came to be is very important. And you know, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. My sister blocked out. I mean, you have to sometimes, you know, block out those memories. And I'm very protective of my sister. You know, I'm always have been. I'm the older one. And
what's the age difference?
We're only 18 months apart, so like a year and a half. So we're very close. Close knit. And, yeah, I mean, I feel that it is my responsibility to stick up for her when I can. You know, it was just different from speaking for her, right? And, I mean, those moments, I mean, you know, you remember things because of the feeling you had attached to them, right? And I remember feeling, like, really repulsed, really upset and scared when that kid called her poopskin, and I almost like, probably would have gotten suspended if I did what I wanted to do. You know, those moments are, again, it's like this like feeling of like powerlessness because I can't stop people from saying ignorant, hurtful things like that to her. All I can do is step in when I can, but also you know, like encourage her to speak out for those things too. And she's definitely very vocal today, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, right. I think it kind of goes back to that. These are all things that are deeply rooted in what America is, and a good portion of this country looks at that as a positive, and you know, then there's this other group of us that look at it as an inevitable and extremely frustrating thing that we must live with and reflect upon, and you know, just deal with. And they're horrible, and it's never going to go away. And it's not like it was ever better or worse, but it's part of the fabric of this place that we're all lucky enough to be in, because it's far worse elsewhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's like I don't know. I just think that you're just back to some earlier statements. You're putting your finger on some things that everybody's upset with, and you're doing it in a way that you know, this conversation is a welcome one, but it doesn't have to happen. And you're creating a scenario where it can, and it's comfortable, and it's in a wonderful place and in a wonderful environment. And so thanks for that, and I think everybody else thanks you. And I can't wait to see what you do next. I can't wait to see the next 3 years of Alicia McDaniel.
Me too.
Cool. Well, thank you all for coming. And oh yeah, one more.
Well, I did have a question. I'm so sorry. Do we have any time?
Yeah, no, fine. This is not. I just, you know, it's very cold in here. I don't know. But,
well, you know, I also just wanted to comment about how I feel that your exhibit and the way you do things really breaks too what really breaks a lot of boundaries, you know, like even this artist talk, how you sit here, your sister's also part of it, and she's sitting here talking, you know. And so I also wanted the food, like, you know, I feel like early on Saturday morning you have this heavy pork, you know, which is just amazing, you know, it's like your mom made the carnitas, and I just think it speaks to the whole exhibit, right? I mean, it's I'm very touched by it. It's very heartfelt. So I really appreciate it a lot. I didn't expect this, and I mean, but I did too. You know what I mean? But to walk in and to feel it, and to have that experience, and I can't wait to go to the video because I haven't gotten it yet. But yeah, I just really appreciate this. So I guess I wanted to ask. So I'd like to also ask perhaps an unconventional question at an art talk about you and your sister, and perhaps one of you could answer about like how, you know, that's also very unconventional. I feel that when artists, you know, there's an assumption like in the West, right, that artists are individuals and they come up with their own ideas, you know, and it's brilliant, their idea. But yet I also feel here in the space that I can see, like I can feel the presence of so many people, and we even have the word ancestors up there on your screen, you know. And then I see them too, and then like touch their food and things like that. I was just sitting here when your friends loved your outfit, and your mom said, "Yeah, well, that's the business." And also coming from a family of artists myself, and I have a sister who's close in age, but we've had a lot. You know, how is it you come to a point in your lives that you collaborate and you try to collaborate in a really honest and truthful way? I mean, because I know that being a sister is not an easy thing too. There, you know, especially when you're talking about colorism, there's a lot of, there's perhaps jealousies that come up, or envy, or something, you know, these are the issues you're talking about here. You know, I feel that a big deal for me. So I was just, if you could both talk to that, I don't know, if you could get the gist of my question, what I'm asking you to comment on.
Yeah, I think the question is mostly with both your friends working together and reflecting on our experiences.
And how did you do that? That you know, that you felt like you can do that. That's possible.
Yeah. I think think it's I think it's been really fantastic for both of us. I'm very fortunate that she's also in a creative practice of writing, and I think it's really important that during this time in our lives, we're learning so much about ourselves. And for me, I'm learning a lot about myself through her. She's always been there with me my entire life. She's, my best friend, and just like, it's been bringing us closer together, actually. She's in Oakland, I'm in San Francisco, so it's great physically that we're close by. And, I'm glad that we are in a space where we can talk about this, because it wasn't easy to bring it up the first time, and we started having conversations about this just about a few years ago, really. And we always shared these stories at family functions, like, oh my God, the cops stopped Alicia because she thought she was kidnapping her cousin. They thought she was kidnapping a kid, and that was my cousin. But to talk about it more on the serious level of where it is, has been really important. And, I'm always, Melissa and I were very close, so I'm always gonna be there for her. And, it hasn't been easy talking about it, because, arguments do come up. We're sisters, we're really close. Or misinterpretations of the same situation happen too. We are always going to experience and perceive something differently. But it's been great working with her, because she'll be able to put me in check too, with my own assumptions, or maybe my own position of privilege. And we keep each other pretty grounded. And I'm just really happy for both of us that we're in this great place together. And it's been really hard. It's been really difficult, especially this past 2 years. So I'm great she's there for me. Very lucky.
Cool. And thanks for your kind words about the exhibition.
Melissa, did you have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to add that, when writing the book for segregate, I think it would have been really hard to do it alone, so I appreciate my sister. There's times when I called her late at night, and I was working on midterms too, around the time I was working on the writing, and so I was even more like this bundle of nerves and emotions. So I was calling my sister late hours of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning. And she was always consistently there for me. And I think we really bonded over the show. And we learned how to really work with each other. And it was a really nice experience.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. We're going to try to turn the show back into a show and not a small theater. Please eat some of the wonderful food. And thank you, Rachel, for bringing it. We're going to have another one for a video open call on January 19th. It is not the second Saturday, but we're going to still call it the second Saturday Artist Talk, even though it's the third Saturday. I have no idea who's going to attend. We barely just picked the artists for the video open call this year, so it'll be cold and wonderful again, and we'll have some other snacks and mimosas, and hopefully we'll have a nice chat about video art and the content in that show. So thank you all for coming. Thank you very much, Alicia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Oh my God, you're so big.
This is amazing.
Oh,